Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1739 of our daily content grind, and today we get to talk about this happy little UFO you see over on the center of the screen. We love Cosmos, right? There's just something about him. It's the unique look, it's the kind of dumpy proportions, it's the green and the yellow, it's whatever it is. Cosmos is an incredibly charming Transformer design, regardless of how much sense his alt mode makes. An old school, like 50s, 60s sci-fi UFO. And you know what? We love him for it. We love that he is something ridiculous in a world of sports cars and, military jets. He stands out, he is unique, but unfortunately, we have to admit, much as the fandom really likes Cosmos in general, it is a hard sell. Most kids, for the same reason they didn't do Soundwave for so long, most kids don't know what an old school UFO looks like. Popularly, he is referred to as a doorbell, because that's kind of what his vehicle mode looks like. The end result is that there have been a lot of attempts over the years to try to do things with Cosmos that have ultimately led to disaster. Or he happens to find himself nearby when things go wrong for a particular area of Transformers. Now, this was a very isolated thing for a while. It was a span of a few years where Cosmos seemed to bring a curse to whatever brand of Transformers he was involved with at the time. But now it's become relevant again, so we must discuss it one more time. So this begins in Classics of all places. So even with an incredibly limited roster and toy run, there was still a design idea floating around in Hasbro to actually do a brand new Cosmos as one of the deluxes. And the design actually looks pretty cool. I mean, they did do what they could to try to modernize the character. He doesn't have the dumpy proportions anymore. He has like a lot more standard warrior shapes to him. He has slimmed down over the years. He has been given a facelift, literally. His face is far more serious than it used to be. Oh, and now we have spikes coming out of his flying saucer mode, because they still really needed to do something new with the flying saucer mode. So, yeah, spike it up, make it look a little bit more intimidating. So, the unfortunate thing, even by the hand of Don Figueroa, the design could not be made cool enough for Hasbro's upper branch to accept the toy. So unfortunately, despite some really cool design work and a really nice redesign, this Cosmos never came to pass. It is one of the toys, one of the designs we know got furthest along in what would have potentially been another extension of Classics. Now, these days, we know he's not the reason the line got canceled, but it is weird that he got canned, in this line that lasted such a short time. But nowadays, we pretty much know that there were a lot of toys that Classics were supposed to release that never got to. We found out about a smaller version of this Optimus Prime, a deluxe that would have come with a trailer. We also found out about more recent discoveries, things like a Blastoff repainted from the Astro Train, a Snapdragon, so we guess would have been repainted from Grimlock, among other various repaints of the current toys from Classics. That included a red Mirage, a Diaclone repaint we still have never gotten in any iteration of the character. So it's just kind of like we got the blame on Cosmos because it's just the first one we knew about. It's the first canceled toy that we were aware of out of Classics. But it does start giving the boy an unfortunate reputation that continued on. This design eventually did see a physical prototype as part of Titanium. And while it is slimmed down because Titanium did not have the budget or the engineering prowess to get a toy as good as Classics, they did, for the most part, recreate the design pretty faithfully. There's only a little bit missing here and there, but ultimately, it would have absolutely been like the Classics design, just in a altered form with some die-cast parts. Now, this one making it to the hard prototype stage meant they were seriously considering its release. So that is an improvement over the Classics version. But then again, this is Titanium, a toy line that did not start off on the right foot. This was not designed by anyone at Takara. Everything in this line was designed by Galoob, the Micro Machines team. A team that had absolutely no experience in getting a vehicle to transform into an action figure. So unfortunately, Titanium ended up very quickly having a poor reputation for poor quality, engineering confusion, and just overall unpleasant experiences with their toys. And unfortunately, that does mean Cosmos got the axe again. So we kind of put the blame for a while there. Because these were relatively close together, we kind of started blaming Cosmos for the cancellation of both Classics and Titanium, and it started this whole idea that Cosmos was somehow cursed, that if a line was planning to include Cosmos, the line would end up dead. Now, in the weird situation of Titanium, this also coincides with a similar curse we had for a long time with RC. Though that was more along the lines of every time they tried to do an RC toy, it would get canceled, not necessarily the line or project attached to it. It's a incidental, like crossing of paths of the two curses, but incidental is all it is. There was some fun stuff that Titanium was cooking up, and they were getting genuinely better at making toys as the line went on. This just unfortunately added to a trend at the time. Cosmos got a long shelf life before finally in Thrilling 30, we finally got one at a much more safe size class. So as much of the Classics design as they could adapt was adapted into what would eventually be the Thrilling 30 Legends class Cosmos. And this one, you can see the little bits that are left from that design, the much lower profile of the spaceship for starters, the spikes coming out of the sides, the overall more lean proportions, especially in the torso shape. It's not a one-to-one recreation of that design, but the spirit's definitely there. So in one way or another, it did finally make it out, kind of. And we really do like this toy. This was overall a pretty nice little Cosmos. It was great to see him back as a full-fledged action figure again. Because we really hadn't had one since G1 at that point. This was his first modern incarnation, and it was a really, really good one. We liked this one. In fact, we seem to have broken the curse at the time because also a original size Legends figure came out around the same time. Both toys, by the way, trying to solve the one issue that comes across with the Cosmos design, and that is, what direction is he facing? This is a little green hockey puck. I need to know which direction he's going in. So you'll notice both of them have a tail fin that is not present in any of the original fiction. We just needed something to indicate this is the back section. Kind of funny in that. But hey, look, Cosmos got a couple toys, right? Things are looking up, right? We need to go to 2008. So Cosmos's whole curse became hit and miss. Yeah, he started getting toys out, which is great, but then we have to look at things like Spotlight Cosmos. We were going to get an entire comic book issue devoted to our favorite little green spaceman. And then that got canceled too. So it was planned for release in 2009, but at the time they were facing a lot of criticism over the writing quality over at IDW. So a lot of their side projects got scrapped to focus in on the main line. And one of them was, unfortunately, a Spotlight Cosmos. We have very little idea of what was going to be in this issue. We have a little bit of supplementary material that might have touched on it, but that's completely unconfirmed. But yeah, he also had a canceled Spotlight issue. Now, Spotlight would eventually come back. They would do new issues once the brand was a little bit more secure and doing a little bit better over there. Unfortunately, they never went back and touched on this again. So, in some strange bit of coincidence, As it turns out, Cosmos will be one of the last Transformers you see in IDW 2.0 before they lost the license. A little bit of irony there from canceled to full cancellation. I can't really blame Cosmos for that. Frankly, the Valentine's special issue with him and Blasov was one of the better things in IDW 2.0. So I'm not really going to fault him for the cancellation there. Those books had plenty of their own problems. Cosmos just having a bit of a focus in those issues and being there at the end, I think that's more accidental than anything. Oh, he's not the only form of media that Cosmos was planned to appear in, by the way. So we actually know that Cosmos had a few other plans. So in the aligned cartoon, either fourth season of Prime or whatever replaced it, so RID 2015, he was going to be the scout for the Star Seekers forced by Thundertron into the job. He would have had the traditional like B-movie UFO if he had actually been part of the cast. And this is all adapted from a potential episode of Transformers Animated Season 4. So, in every situation, this episode got scrapped. Obviously, we did not get a fourth season of either of those shows, and he did not make an appearance in RID. We would be waiting all the way until Cyberverse before we got any glimpse of a modern Cosmos in a cartoon. And she was a girl at the time. Now, if we want to continue on this train of, well, Cosmos is unfortunately very close to cancellations of lines, we need to look at this one. So, we were all kind of surprised when the capsule line at Walmart produced a completely new mold for Cosmos, a mold that originally wasn't supposed to exist. Famously, Takara bragged, or Hasbro bragged on behalf of Takara, that originally they were planning to retool the Origin Bumblebee figure into a brand new Cosmos toy in order to budget this into something doable. However, someone at Takara managed to figure out how to get this into a much, much tighter mold. Just the way the parts are distributed, things were painted, etc. I believe this toy only used 3 or 4 steel molds to make, when a deluxe would normally be like 7 to 9, something like that. Meaning they made it far more economical to produce, meaning we got to have a brand new toy in the Velocitron line. And it's a really good Cosmos. The engineering on it is really nice. It's a really good modern representation of the original design. Maybe a little bit taller than the original, not quite as dumpy, but as far as modern toys go, he's a really, really good example. And despite having such a popular toy and a very, like, unfortunately scalped toy, the rest of the line kind of struggled to find audience. So that meant that Wave 2 became exceptionally difficult to find. This would have also included a second run of Cosmos because, yeah, if you had a brand new mold, of course you're going to run across 2 waves of this. It did make toys like Shadow Strip, our G2 drag strip, exceptionally difficult to find. Very, very few stores actually got them in stock. And then we just ended up finding a lot of them at Ross. That's it. So the Velocitron line did get cut off just after Wave 2 started to ship, meaning that, yeah, once again, Cosmos is right there when something got canceled. And while the Deluxes eventually saw a release, it does mean that the toy-accurate Hot Rod that was going to be part of that lineup got axed completely, and we have not seen the like since. In lieu of that, we got the More Than Meets the Eye version, which is straight-up cartoon-accurate pink and magenta. Far better. Far better, in my opinion. So, it is weird that Cosmos seems to just kind of float around, for lack of better phrasing, anytime some major Transformers line gets axed, or anytime like a piece of fiction decides to use him for something. All of that gets scrapped, and then the line, or the show, the comic book, or whatever comes to an end. And it just keeps happening. And we need to bring it up again because of this boy. I may or may not have done this entire video just so we can talk about this. So, July of last year, we got this stock photo of the brand new Cosmos toy for Earthspark. And this was actually a really well received toy. Like, it looks really cool. It looks like a fun toy. I mean, this was in the later run of Earthspark toys where they really started to figure out their budget and could make a really solid figure despite it. And this is a really charming take on Cosmos. I mean, yeah, he should be way bigger. The scaling would be terrible. But the point was, we actually really like the look of this. This actually looked like it was going to be a fun Cosmos, and it's a Weird Al character. So you already had people excited for another Weird Al Transformer to be brought into the new toy line. And then the line gets canceled. So the unfortunate thing here is that if you look on TF Wiki, they will say that this toy is officially canceled, though we really haven't had any actual announcement from Hasbro. And that's largely because this is part of Earthspark, the kid toy line, and the marketing for the kid toy line, if you haven't noticed, is generally pretty awful. They don't do any kind of like special announcements or press releases like the main lines do. They don't have their own little section of Hasbro Pulse fan streams. It is literally just maybe they show up someday. We found out about a lot of like Cyber World toys in the last year, literally weeks before they were sighted in person, sometimes just days. Yeah, they're not really good at keeping us up to date on these things. So because it's a different team, because it's handled by a different section of Hasbro, we don't have any real contact as to what the status of these figures are, or if they will see any kind of release. We do have the Prime Changers, those generic white box, quasi deluxes that you usually see hanging beside the quote real Transformers. And right now, that just amounts to 2 Cyberverse repaints and a brand new Megatron mold. So we know they're willing to do brand new molds in that line, but whether or not they are willing to do an Earthspark design in that line, we have yet to see yet. This mold is, or was, highly demanded by the audience. Like, we actually were really looking forward to this. And, when it gets to this point, where we actually have this hard proto that's fully painted and color molded and everything, this means the steel molds are done. The most expensive part of producing a toy has already been completed, and at this point, it would be more economical for them to release the toy in whatever way they can, rather than letting that investment go to waste. Which is where I have some hope that we might still see this at some point, and we just need to stir up enough noise. Now, for those of you who are hoping for maybe some of the leftovers from Earthspark to also make their way out, like Spitfire, for instance, that one I would not hold your breath. As much as I would love for a Spitfire toy to actually come out and complete my Terrans, at the very least to have both of my Chaos Terrans, I really don't think this is going to ever happen. It's going to be another weird victim of like the Cosmos curse. Of like, well, I'm sorry, you were planned to be released around the same time, so I guess you have to suffer too. Which is unfortunate, because I really like her as a character, and she's voiced by Zelda Williams. That counts for something. But yeah, I really wanted to talk about that Earthspark Cosmos and remind everybody that it exists, and that we were denied what looked like a really fun toy. All because, for whatever reason, when Cosmos comes up, bad things happen. I don't know why. But it happens more often than it doesn't. And it's getting weird. It was weird before, but now we're experiencing it again. So, that's just like a weird bit of coincidence that revolves around the character. It's worth talking about. And yeah, I want to vent. So that was me for the day. Thank you all for watching me just basically give you this weird bit of Transformer history just so I could rant about an unreleased toy I really wanted. Thank you for putting up with me. And as always, I will see you next time. Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.